My name is Lucas McLean, and this is chapter 13 of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Nicholas Flamel. Dumbledore had convinced Harry not to go looking for the Mirror of Erased again, and for the rest of Christmas holidays of the invisibility cloak stayed folded at the bottom of his trunk. Harry wished he could forget what he'd seen in the mirror as easily, but he couldn't. He started having nightmares over and over again. He dreamed about his parents disappearing in a flash of green light, while a high voice crackled with laughter. "You see, Dumbledore was right. That mirror could drive you mad," said Ron. When Harry told him about these dreams, Hermione, who came back the day before term, started to look at different view of things. She was torn between the horror of Harry being out of bed, roaming the school 3 nights in a row, if Filch had caught you, and disappointment that he couldn't at least found out who Nicholas Flamel. They had almost given up hope of ever finding Flamel in the library books, even though Harry was still sure he'd read the name somewhere. Once term had started, they were back into skimming through books, looking for 10 minutes during breaks. Harry had even less time than the other two because Quidditch practice had started again. Wood was working team harder than ever. Even the end of less rain had been replaced with snow. Couldn't dampen his spirits. The Weasleys complained that Wood was becoming fantastic, but Harry was on Wood's side. If they won their next match against Hufflepuff, they would overtake Slytherin in the house championship for the first time in 7 years. Quite apart from wanting to win, Harry had found he had fewer nightmares when he was tired after training. Then, during one particular wet and muddy practice section, Wood gave him an extra bit of bad news. He'd gotten very angry with the Weasleys and kept dive-bombing each other at pretending to fall off their brooms. "Will you stop messing around?" he said. "It's exactly the sort of thing that'll lose us the match. Snape's refereeing this time, and he'll be looking for an excuse to knock off points for Gryffindor." George and Weasley's did fall on his brooms at these words. "Snape's refereeing?" He spluttered through a mouthful of mud. Whenever he refs a Quidditch match, he's not going to be fair. If we might overtake Slytherin. The rest of the team landed next to George and to complain too. It's not my fault," said Wood. "We've just got to make sure to play a clean game so Snape hasn't got an excuse to pick on us." Which was all very well. But he had another reason for wanting Snape near them while he was playing Quidditch. The rest of the team hung back to talk one another at the end of the practice, but Harry headed straight back to the Gryffindor common room, where he found Ron and Hermione playing chess. Chess was the only thing Hermione has ever lost at. Sorry. Ever lost at something. Harry and Ron thought it was very good for him. "Don't talk to me for a moment," said Ron when Harry sat down next to him. "I need a concern," said Ron when Harry sat down next to him. "I need a concern." He caught sight of Harry's face. "What's the matter with you? You look terrible." Speaking quietly so that no one else would hear, Harry told the other two captain about Snape's dead and sinister desire to be a Quidditch referee. "Don't play," said Hermione. "Say if you're ill," said Ron. "Pretend to break your leg," Hermione suggested. "Really break your leg," said Ron. "I can't," said Harry. "There isn't a reserve seeker. If I back out, Gryffindor can't play at all." At that moment, Neville toppled onto the common room. How he managed to climb through the portrait hole was anyone's guess, because his legs had been stuck together with recognized at once a leg locker curse. He must have had to bunny hop all the way up to Gryffindor Tower. Everyone fell Everyone fell over laughing except for Hermione, who leapt up and got reformed to this counter curse. Neville's leg gaps spread apart, and he got his feet trembling. "What happened?" said Hermione, asking him, leaning over him to sit with Harry and Ron. "Malfoy," said Neville shakingly. "I met him outside the library. He said he'd been looking for someone to practice that on. Go to Professor McGonagall." Hermione urged again Neville report him. Neville shook his head. "I don't want to be more trouble," he murmured. "You've got to stand up for yourself, Neville," said Ron. "He's used to walking over everybody, but that's the reason to lie down in front of him and make it easier." "There's no need to tell me. I'm not brave enough to be in Gryffindor. Malfoy's already done that." Neville choked out. Harry felt in his pocket robe. He pulled out a chocolate frog, the very last one from the box Hermione had given him for Christmas. He gave it to Neville, who looked though as he might cry. "You're worth 12 of Malfoy," Harry said. "The Sorting Hat chose you for Gryffindor, didn't it? And where's Malfoy? Stinking Slytherin." Neville's lips twitched in a weak smile as he unwrapped the frog. "Thanks, Harry. I think I'll go to bed. Do you want a card to collect them, don't you?" As Neville walked away, Harry looked at the famous wizard card, Dumbledore again. He said he was the first one ever Dumbledore again, he said. "He was the first one I ever..." He gasped. He stared back at the card and then looked up at Ron and Hermione. "I found him," he whispered. "I found Flamel." "Told you I read the name somewhere before. I read it on the train coming here. Listen to this. Dumbledore particularly famous for defeat the dark arts wizard Grindelwald in 1945 for the discovery of 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel." Hermione jumped to her feet. She hadn't looked so excited since they had gotten back their marks from the very first piece of homework. "Stay there," she said. He squinted up the stairs to the girls' dormitory. Harry and Ron barely had time to exchange mystified looks before she was dashing back, an enormous old book in her arms. "I never thought to look here," she whispered excitedly. "I got this at a library weeks ago before a bit light reading." "Light?" said Ron. Hermione took a second to be quiet until she looked up something. Started flicking frantically through the pages, muttered to herself. At least found what she was. "I knew it! I knew it!" "Are we not allowed to speak yet?" said Ron grumbly. Hermione ignored. "Nicholas Flamel," she whispered dramatically. "He is the only known maker of the Sorcerer's Stone." This didn't have quite the effect she expected. "The what?" said Harry and Ron. "Honestly, do you two not read? Look, read that there." She pushed the book toward them, and Harry and Ron read. "The ancient study of alchemy is concerned with making Sorcerer's Stone a legendary substance with astonishing powers. The stone will transform any metal into pure gold, and also produces an elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal. There have been many reports of the Sorcerer's Stone over the centuries, but the only stone currently in existence belongs to Mr. Nicholas Flamel, the noted alchemist and opera lover. Mr. Flamel, who celebrated his 665th birthday last year, enjoys a quiet life in a Devon with his wife, Pennell, 658. "See," said Hermione. When Harry and Ron finished, "The dog must have been guarding Flamel's Sorcerer's Stone. I bet he asked Dumbledore to keep it safe for him, because they're friends. I knew someone was after it." One sec. Sorry. "And the dog must have Dumbledore to keep it safe, because they're friends, and he knew someone was after it. And that's why he wanted the stone to be moved out of Gringotts. A stone that makes gold and stops you from ever dying, Harry?" No wonder Snape's after it. Anyone would want it. And no wonder we couldn't find Flamel to study our recent developments in wizardry. He's not exactly recent. He's 665. He is he? The next morning, in the defense against dark arts, while copying down different ways of treating werewolf bites, Harry and Ron were still discussing what they could do with the sorcerer's stone if they had one. It wasn't until Ron said he was busy with his own Quidditch team that Harry remembered about Snape and the coming to the match. I'm going to play, he told Ron and Hermione. If I don't, all the Slytherins will think I'm just too scared to face Snape. I'll show them. It's really wipe the smiles off their faces if we win. Just as long as we're not wiping off the field, said Hermione. As the match drew near, however, Harry became more and more nervous. Whatever told Ron and Hermione, the rest of the team wasn't too calm either. The idea of overtaking Slytherin in the house championship was wonderful. No one had ever done it for 7 years. But would they be allowed to? Is there such a base referee? Harry didn't know whether he was imagining or not, but he seemed to keep running into Snape wherever he went. At times, he even wondered whether Snape was following him, trying to catch him on his own potions lessons, or taking a sort of a weekly torture. Snape was so horrible, so Harry see Snape possibly know they'd find out about the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry didn't see how he could, yet sometimes he had horrible feelings that Snape could read minds. Harry knew when they wished for good luck outside the locker rooms the next afternoon that Ron and Hermione were wondering whether they'd ever see him alive again. This wasn't what you'd call comforting. Harry hardly heard a word of Wood's pep talk as he pulled on his Quidditch robes and picked up his Nimbus 2000. Ron and Hermione, meanwhile, had found a place in the stands next to Neville, who couldn't understand the boy who looked so grim and worried why they had both been taught their wands to be the match. Little Harry known that Ron and Hermione had been secretly practicing the leg locker curse they'd gotten the idea from Malfoy and using it on Neville, and were ready to use it on Snape. Before Snape can favor Hufflepuff too much. The whole school's out there, said Fred usually peering out the door, even blind Dumbledore's come to watch. Harry's heart did a somersault. Dumbledore? He said, dashing to the door to make sure Fred was right. There was no mistaking that silver beard. Harry could have out loud with relief. He was safe. There's no simply way that Snape would dare try to hurt him if Dumbledore was watching. Perhaps that's why Snape was looking so angry as the teams marching onto the field. Something that Ron noticed too. I've never seen Snape look so mean, he told Hermione. Look, they're off. Ouch! Someone had poked Ron in the back of the head. It was Malfoy. Oh, sorry, Weasley. Didn't see you there. Malfoy grinned, broadly at Crabbe and Goyle, wondering how long Potter's going to stay on his broom. But this time, anyone want to bet? What about you, Weasley? Ron didn't answer. Snape had just awarded Hufflepuff a penalty because George Weasley had hit a boulder at him. Hermione, who had all her fingers crossed in her laps, was squinting fixedly at Harry's, who was circling the game like a hawk, looking for the snitch. You know how they think they choose people for Gryffindor team. They say they put Malfoy loudly a few times later, as Snape awarded Hufflepuff another penalty for no reason at all. It's if they feel sorry for it. They see Potter, who's got no parents, and there's the Weasleys, who's got no monies. You should be on the team, Longbottom. You got no brains. Neville went bright with red. He turned his face to Malfoy. I'm worth 12 of you, Malfoy, he stammered. Malfoy Crab Goyle howled with laughter, but Ron, still not daring to take his eyes from the game, and said, You tell him, Neville, Longbottom. If brains are gold, you'd be the poorer than the Weasleys. And that's saying something. Ron's nerves already stretched to the breaking point with anxiety about Harry. I'm warning you, Malfoy. One more word. Run, said Hermione. Harry, what? Where? Harry had suddenly gone into a spectacular dive, which drew gasps, cheers from the crowd. Hermione stood up, crossed her fingers in her mouth, and Harry streaked down towards the ground like a bullet. You're in luck. Weasley Potter's about supposedly spotted some money on the ground, said Malfoy. Ron snapped before Malfoy knew what was happening. Ron was on top of him, wrestling him to the ground. Neville hesitated, then clambered to the back of the seat for help. Come on, Harry, Hermione screamed. Leaping into her seat to watch Harry speed straight at Snape, she didn't even notice Malfoy and Ron rolling around on the seat over the scuffled yelps coming from the royal fist that was Neville, Crabbe, and Goyle. Up in the air, Snape turned on his broomstick just in time to see something scarlet shoot past him, missing him by inches. Then a second, Harry pulled out the device, his arm raising in humph, the snitch clasped to his hand. The stains erupted. It had to be a record. No one could ever remember the snitch being caught so quickly. Ron, where are you? The game's over. Harry's won. We've won. Gryffindor's in the lead, shrieked Hermione, dancing up and down in her seat and hugging Parvati Patel in the row in front. Harry jumped onto his broom with a foot on the ground. I couldn't believe it. He'd done it. The game was over. It had barely lasted 5 minutes as Gryffindor came spilling onto the field. He saw Snape land nearby, white-faced and tight-lipped, and then Harry felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up into Dumbledore's smiling face. Well done, said Dumbledore quietly, so that only Harry could hear. Nice to see you haven't been brooding around about that mirror. Been keeping busy, excellent. Snape spat bitterly on the ground. Harry left the locker room alone sometime later to take his Nimbus 2000 back to the broom shed. He couldn't ever remember feeling happier. He'd really done something proud of now. Now he could. No one could say he was famous name anymore. The evening air never smelled so sweet. He walked over the damp grass, revolving the last hour in his head, which was a happy blur. The Gryffindors running lift to his shoulders. Ron and Hermione in the distance, jumping up and down. Ron cheered through a heavy nosebleed. Harry had reached the shed, leaned against the wooden door, and looked up at Hogwarts with its windows glowing red in the setting sun. Gryffindor in the lead. He'd done it. He'd shown Snape And speaking of Snape, a hooded figure came swiftly down the front steps of the castle. A hooded figure had, clearly not wanting to be seen, it walked fast toward the forbidden forest. Harry's victory faded from his mind. As he watched, he recognized the figure's prowling walk. Snape sneaking into the forest while everybody was at dinner? What was going on? Harry jumped into his Nimbus 2000 and took off, gliding silently over the castle. He saw Snape enter the forest at a run. He followed. There were trees so thick he couldn't even see where Snape had gone. He flew in circles, lower and lower, brushing the top of branches, until he heard voices gliding toward them, landed noiselessly in the towering beech tree. He climbed carefully along the branches, holding tight to his broomstick, trying to see through the leaves. Below in a shadowy clearing stood Snape, but he wasn't alone. Quirrell was there too. Harry couldn't make him out look on his face, but he was stuttering worse than ever. Harry strained to catch what they were doing. Don't know why you wanted to meet me here out of all places, Severus. Oh, I thought we'd keep this private, said Snape, his voice icy. Students aren't supposed to know about the sorcerer's stone, after all. Harry leaned forward. Quirrell was mumbling something. Snape interrupted him. Have you found how to get past the beast of Hagrid's yet? But Severus, You don't want me as your enemy, Quirrell, said Snape, taking a step towards him. I don't know what you want. You know perfectly well what I mean. An owl hooted loudly, and Harry nearly fell out of the tree. He steadied himself in the air in time to hear Snape say, You're a little bit of hocus pocus. I'm waiting. I don't. Very well, Snape cut in. We'll have another little chat soon, when you've had some time to think what things are going over and decide where your loyalties lie. He threw a cloak over his head and strode out of the clearing. It was almost dark now. Harry could see Quirrell standing quite still as though he was petrified. Harry, where have you been? Hermione squeaked. We won! You won! We won! Shouted Ron, triumphing Harry on the back. And I gave Malfoy a black eye. And Neville tried to take on Crabbe and Goyle single-headed. She's still out, cold. But Madame Pomfrey says she'll be all right. Talk about showing Slytherin. Everyone's been waiting for you in the common room. We're having a party. Fred and George have stole some cake stuff from the kitchens. Never mind that now, Harry said breathlessly. Let's find this empty room. Wait till you hear this. He made sure Peeves wasn't inside before shutting the door behind him. Then he told him what he had heard. So we were right. It is the sorcerer's stone. And Snape's trying to force Quirrell to help him get it. He asked if he knew how to get past Fluffy, and he said something about Quirrell's hocus pocus. I reckon there are other things guarding the stone apart, the Fluffy, loads of enchantments, and probably Quirrell would have some anti-dark arts spell that Snape needs to break through. So you mean stone's only safe as long as Quirrell stands up to Snape? And Hermione, in alarm, it'll be gone by Tuesday, said Ron. That is the end of chapter 13, and I'll see you next time.